Okay, Rabbi, let's get started with Pas Akum. What's the story? Pas Akum, Pas palter, Pas Balbayis, Pas Yisrael. What does it include? What is it talking about? What are the Terim? Is that really a thing? Are we Machmer? Are we Mekel? Is there a connection to Hanukkah? Let's find out. So, also, I just want to point out, we're talking about bread or food that is completely kosher. Just want to put that out there. And the question is, there's no kashrus issues in regards to the ingredients. The ingredients are completely kosher. But if it was cooked by a guy, is that an issue? Let's go through the sugya. Now, there's a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, and it lists 3 foods that are mutter ba'achila, aser ba'achila midrabanan, and mutter ba'hana. That's aser ba'achila midrabanan and mutter ba'hana. That those 3 things are cholav akum, which is something that we discussed in a shiur way back when. In YouTube or Google Drive, and you can find our shiur on cholav Yisrael. Number 2 is there is pas akum, which is something that we're going to discuss today at length to see that isser, if that isser applies and where it applies. And number 3 in the Mishnah is shemen akum, that it's also to use shemen of the goyim. What, did I miss something? Shemen akum? How come I never heard of that? Yeah, no, it's okay. It's fine. It's just like 6 minutes in Daf Yomi every 7.5 years. It's okay if you don't remember it, you didn't hear about it. Because Shemen Akum was a gezerah, and as the Mishnah explains, Rebbe Ubeis Dinoi were mater Shemen Akum. So Maisa, Seif Kol Seif, Tachlis, the Isser of Shemen Akum no longer applies. Rebbe and his Bezdin were mater it. So the Gemara asked, how could Rebbe and his Bezdin be mater it? Surely there is a klal that we see all over in the Torah. One cannot be mater gezerah from a different Bezdin unless you are greater in number and wisdom. And l'chayra with Yeridus Adayers, it's just not going to happen. So how could Rebbe go and be mevatel gezerah that happened way, way earlier in time? And the Gemara answers with a concept, a klal, that a gezerah that Roiv Tzipor is not able to handle, that gezerah isn't chal. That gezerah doesn't stick. It doesn't work. It doesn't last. Only a gezerah will only last if Roiv Tzipor can handle the gezerah. But when it came to Shemen Akum, for whatever reason, historically, Shemen was very important, and the tzibur couldn't handle it. Memela, the gezerah was never chal, and therefore for Rebbe to step up to the plate and be mater it, that worked. That wasn't a problem. Okay, so that's Shemen Akum. Now, what about Pas Akum, the focus of today? So there was a gezerah of Pas Akum. Now, by the way, that was my connection to Hanukkah. First connection was the connection of Shemen. Let's see if we'll find something else. So Pas Akum, there's a gezerah that was probably made by Daniel, not to have the bread of the goyim. Now, over here, the Mishnah does not say that a later Rebbe or somebody else came and was mater it. So we do not have a Mishnah that says that anybody was mater it. So seemingly this gezerah still applies, which means that bread which is made by a non-Jew is going to be aser be'achila. And when we say Pas Akum, which is an acronym which stands for Avodas Kechavim, idol worshippers, the poskim say it doesn't mean specifically idol worshippers. It means any goyim. Back in the day, there was you had to be careful what you wrote in the Gemara because the goyim were checking. Therefore, we wrote idol worshippers, but really it includes all goyim, even Arabs. Okay, fine. So all goyim create Pas Akum. Now, the Gemara brings different versions of different stories of Rebbe, which somehow sounds that in certain scenarios Rebbe was mater the Isser, but not definitely the entire klal of Pas Akum, not the entire din of Pas Akum, but in certain scenarios Pas Akum was allowed. Now, it's very unclear from the Gemara in which specific scenarios the Gezerah was rescinded or was never stuck in the first place. So within the Rishonim, there are various shitas. There's the shita of Tosfos and the Mordechai, which sound like the Gezerah was never chal at all by palter. And perhaps it was never even chal at all. So actually, I want to actually say that a little clearer. According to the Mordechai and Tosfos, it wasn't chal at all, meaning it was a gezerah that Rav Tzipor was not able to handle, and Memela, the gezerah was never chal, never applicable, and there's no such thing as pas akam anymore. The kasha on these Rishonim is, why didn't the Mishnah say that Rabbi Beis Dina was matter, just like they did by Shemin, tzarachin? There's other Rishonim that say that the gezerah was never chal when it came to the palter, the goyish professional baker that bakes the bread to sell. There, the gezerah was never accepted. But not to eat bread pas bal bayis, bread from the house of your goyish neighbor, that was chal. And then there's a further opinion, which is the opinion of the Rambam, that says pretty much the gezerah was chal. It was chal. You're not allowed to have pas akam. You're not allowed to have pas palter, which is when bread which is made of the goyish baker. Don't worry, I'll clarify this in a minute. Bread of the goyish baker you also can't have. But in a place where there is no Jewish baker, so in those places where they don't have a Jewish baker, there it was never mikubal, never accepted the gezerah of not having the goyish bread from the goyish baker, and you're allowed to buy bread from a goyish baker in a place where they don't have a Jewish baker. That's the Rambam. So Be'etzim, it was accepted the gezerah with some cutouts, caveats. The Rashba, he says maybe somewhere in between. The Rashba says that whenever the guy makes better bread, or the guy makes certain types of bread that the Jewish baker does not make, then you're allowed. It wasn't accepted to not buy bread from the guy. But if in all the normal cases, I guess, or I don't know if it's normal, where the Jewish baker and the non-Jewish baker make the same bread, there the gezerah was chal, and you can only buy from the Jewish baker. Now, why was this gezerah instituted? So the gezerah was instituted, as the Gemara says, mishum chasanos, to prevent intermarriage. You know, they say in Kiev, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. You know, bring him into the Shabbos table, give him a shtickle cholent, and, you know, a little wine and some cholent, and, you know, before you turn around, the guy sings Shabbos Zemiris and wants a piece of Yiddishkeit. You know what I'm saying? So the way in, unfortunately, is the way out. It works l'toiv l'ra. Unfortunately, the way of getting somebody away from Yiddishkeit is also through his stomach. And therefore, when your neighbor, Goyish neighbor, invites you over for cookies, don't worry, it's all kosher. Check my ingredients and invite you over for those cookies. That's also a way out of Yiddishkeit, because you end up becoming friendly with the Goyim, and that is a big risk to make a matzav of intermarriage. You know, a vart that I always like to say, I said this vart also when we discussed the sugyas of Yayin Nesach, that when it comes to the Pesach Seder, we uncover the matzahs and we pick up the wine and we say, but I think we all sing, V'hi sheyamda laveseinu shalanu, shalei echad b'vad amad aleinu l'chaleseinu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and was matzileinu from all our enemies. And every generation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes and saves us from all our enemies. Now, when we're saying that in every generation they try to destroy us, like we see nowadays, Hamas trying to destroy us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always saves us. Now, there's a question, why do we use the term V'hi she'amda? V'hi is feminine. We usually don't refer to Hashem in the feminine fashion. So why is V'hi, like, and she stood up for us? And she stood up for us is a strange way of referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, standing up for us to destroy our enemies, whether they were the Mitzrayim or whether they were whether Hamas or whoever it's going to be, the Nazis, whoever tried to destroy us, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu got up and saved us. Why are we referring to Hashem V'hi in the feminine? I saw a beautiful pshat that we're doing this while our matzah is uncovered and our wine is held, which are both words that are more feminine type words, matzah, yayin. And we say V'hi Shem, and this is what saved us. The fact that we were zahir, not to have yayin nesach, and the fact that we were zahir with pas Yisrael, not having pas akam, that's what stood up and saved us from intermarriage, from getting destroyed. As we know, the famous Beis Yosef, Hatilenium Miyad Achi Miyad Esav. Esav tries to destroy us like an enemy and like our brother. That kiruv that the Goyim try to do, we have to stay away, and that saves us from being destroyed. So it's a beautiful vart, and I think that's the point of the pas, not to having pas akam, to save us from intermarriage. And once again, this is just, we have the Hanukkah story now, which is also saving us against our enemies. We can't have any of the ashpas of our enemies, and that is the common theme of pas akam with many of the inyanim of Yom Tovim. Okay, that went a little bit off script. Let's get back to it. So, now, the Shulchan Aruch says in Sif Aleph, Kuf Yud Beis Sif Aleph in Yordea, that one is not allowed to have pas akam. Pas akam's aser, even from a goy. Oh, by the way, just to be clear, I want to make three categories. I think this will make it clear for everybody. It's something called pas balabayas. Pas balabayas is goyish homemade bread. That's going to be aser almost always. We have on the opposite extreme, pas Yisrael. Jew makes it. That's always fine. Then we have a middle category, which is we call pas palter, which means goyish made bakery bread. Bread that wasn't made with a Haimish touch. It's not made at home. It's not your neighbor making cookies, but it's rather bread that was made for sale purposes. That was very needed in the history of Klal Yisrael when people, lived on bread, and there was less kirva. There was less closeness in that situation because it wasn't in a warm environment. It was more of a business transaction. Okay, so Sif Aleph says that one can't have pas akam even from a guy who has no children. Oh, there's going to be no intermarriage. If he has no children, there's nobody to intermarry. And the Shach gives an example even from a priest who that he's not having any children. Officially. So you cannot have their bread. Why not? So there's two pshatim. There's the pshat in the Taz, which says it's just a light plug. When we say no bread from Goyim, means no bread from the Goyim. We don't start making cheshbainas. And you have the pshat of the Shach that, listen, you might start off not being connected to this guy's daughters. He doesn't have daughters. But once you're in with the Goyim, so this Goyim has friends, he has nephews, he has nieces, etc. And it's going to lead to intermarriage either way. Okay? Those are the two pshatim. Now, by the way, pas doesn't only mean bread. Misconception. Pas means all baked products of the 5 grains. So that's going to be your bread, that's going to be your bagels, your pretzels, your cookies, maybe some of your cereals. So it's going to be including a lot more things. Now, and there obviously is going to be some gray area things, which there's what to debate. Now, some Sif Beis, now comes along Sif Beis, and all of a sudden it says, wait, some places are makel to buy pas palter, meaning non-Jewish bakery bread, when there is no Jewish bakeries. If you're in a place where there's no Jewish bakeries, there's some places that will buy are noyeg to buy pas akam or pas palter because it's shas chak. So zak the mechaber, since it's going to be shas chak if you don't have any bread, therefore in those places you could buy not pas balbayis. You still can't go to your neighbor to have those cookies, but you could get pas palter, commercially made bread. Now, Zak the Ramah comes in, and he's more makel than the Mechaber, and he says, even when there is a Jewish baker around, one could still go and buy Goyish palter. one can still buy bread from the Goyish palter, no problem. Now, let's stop here and just understand what we just said. Seemingly, the Mechaber holds the Gezerah Pas Akam applies to Pas Palter as well, as long as it's not Shas Chak. But in a case of Shas Chak, there you are allowed to buy from the Palter. Kind of like the Rambam. It's kind of like in the sugya of Hutcher and Dechoya, if you're familiar, it's kind of like Dechoya. Meaning we apply the Isser in all scenarios except the Shas Chak. Whereas the Ramah similarly holds more like the Mordechai and Tosfos, that the Isser doesn't apply. I don't care if there's a Jewish baker in town. You're still allowed to buy from the Goyish baker. Once again, to clarify, everything's kosher. All the ingredients are kosher, I should say. Now, that if we stop right here, we have, if you go to, Brooklyn, Five Towns, Monsey, London, Paris, Yerushalayim, Bnei Brak, Zurich, I don't know, all places with big Jewish from communities. So throw in there Chicago and Cleveland as well. Then the halacha would be that it would be usher to have pas akam if you are Sephardi. And if you are an Ashkenazi, it would be allowed. Whereas if you go to Omaha, Nebraska, and you go to Idaho and all sorts of funny places, there even the Sephardim would be allowed to have pas palter. That's what it sounds like so far. Now, the Shach says, wait, not so fast, Ashkenazim. He says, you should be careful not to buy from the guy. Whenever there's a Jewish baker around, you should not buy from the guy. Unless the pas palter is better. The last point we'll discuss in a little bit. But the Shach sounds a lot more like the Mechaber. Comes along the Aruch HaShulchan, and the Aruch HaShulchan says that in his town and in other big cities, the minhag was that you do not use pas palter. You do not buy from the guy. You only buy pas from the Yisrael. That was the minhag in his town. But in smaller towns, where you don't have a Jewish baker, then the minhag was to buy from the Goyim, from the Goyish baker, and that's the right thing. The Chacham Sadim says a Baal Nefesh should be machmer to buy only from a Jewish baker. The Kaf HaChaim quotes the Arizal and says, stay far away from Pasaka. So, let's see where we're holding, what we got. So once again, the Shach is machmer like the Mechaber. And the Chacham Sadim says you should be, Baal Nefesh should be machmer. The Aruch HaShulchan says a place where you have Jewish bakers, you should be machmer. The Arizal says stay away. This sounds like pretty, good reason. We're usually choshesh for shachs, by the way. Usually when the shach says something, we're usually machmer like the shach. So it sounds like we should, we should start answering pas akam in all these scenarios. Zakter Moshe Feinstein, and he says the minhag is like the Ramah, to be makel. So where do we stand over here? And Rav Vosner says, no, Rav Vosner doesn't like the Rav Moshe's way of viewing it. Rav Vosner goes with what I would call the pashtus, and says, no, we're not makel, you'll be machmer like the shach. So far, based on what I said so far, it sounds like the pashtus is to be machmer, not to have pas palter, goyish bakery bread, if there is a Jewish baker, which there is in most places nowadays. But if somebody wants to rely on the Ramah, where Moshe says the minhag is like the Ramah, certainly somebody's entitled to follow Rav Moshe Feinstein and rely on the Ramah. But the story is not over. If we go a little bit further and we look at Sif Hey, Sif Hey says that if the Goyish palter makes better bread or different types of bread that the Jewish baker does not make, then it is allowed to buy. You're allowed to buy from the Goyish baker. One more time to be clear, we are in the Mechaber. The Mechaber, who's who said previously that you're not allowed to buy from a Goyish baker if there is a Jewish baker in town, says, but if the Goyish baker makes better bread, now all of a sudden you're allowed to buy from the Goyish baker. Now this, in my opinion, changes everything. Because why do people buy palter? Why do people buy Krispy Kreme donuts? Now, just to be clear, I'm not talking about the fact that they're milchiks and chalav stam. That is something I in my shiur on chalav akam. I'm not so happy with chalav akam, to tell you the truth. But put that aside for a second. Why are people, focus on the palter of the Krispy Kreme donuts? Why do they want Krispy Kreme donuts anyways? I'll tell you why. You know why? Because it's better. That's what they want it for. They want it because it's better. Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Yud Beis, Sif Hey. Even the Mechaber says it's allowed. And the Shach, who I quoted previously, also says it's allowed when it is better. Why do they want Stella D'oro cookies? That's not chalav stam. Why do they want Stella D'oro cookies instead of Yankees cookies? Because Stella D'oro cookies are better than Yankees. That's just the way it is. Okay, so it seems that is surely a good heter. Now, it happens to be, just to be clear, that the shach, when the Stella D'oro cookies are better, the shach also says you can have the Stella D'oro cookies. The Aruch HaShulchan, however, says in a place where you have Yankees cookies, you should still be machmer. Okay, and the Arizal will still say, stay away from all sorts of pasakim. But at the end of the day, if the Ramah's mekel, Moshe says the halach is like the Ramah. And furthermore, the shach, in this case, when the Goyish cookies are better, and I think the Olam holds that Stella D'oro cookies are better. And outside of the Chalav Yisrael issue, the Olam holds Krispy Kreme donuts are better. If that's the case, listen, I can't call anybody any names for relying on this, because the halacha is that is allowed. That's what it seems. Now, is there an Indian to be machmer like the Aruch HaShulchan? 100%. Is there an Indian to be machmer like the Arizal? 100%. But l'maisa, the ikar halacha is that those things that taste better are allowed. Listen now, we should be b'nei aliyah and try to do better, etc. But the halacha is that it's allowed. I cannot call somebody a oichel pas akam for having those Krispy Kreme donuts. Whether I could call them a baltaiva or not, that's a different shmooze. You know what I'm saying? That will leave that shmooze for the shmooze, whether they get called a baltaiva. But in terms of the halacha of oichel pas akam, that they are not. Now, weiter. Now, once again, this is in the Svardim and in the Machmer Ashkenazim. Even the Machmer Ashkenazim, they'd be allowed to have it if it tastes better. Now, one thing that I want to note, which is before I do that, one more point I'm going to say. What does better mean, by the way? So, according to the pre-Torah, better means significantly better. It's not just a little bit better. The lashon of the Shulchan Aruch was yoifim mimenu, better than them. So if it has to be significantly better according to the pre-Torah. According to the Chalkas Binyamin, who by the way is the son of Rav Feivel Cohen, the Badei Shulchan's son, Rav Binyamin Cohen. So that the Chalkas Binyamin, no, he's medayik the Shulchan Aruch. Better means better. Yoifim mimenu is better. And I think he's the pashtus, because it doesn't say anywhere it has to be significantly better. It says better, and better is better. So that's how I would go. Now, I think as I said, I think the Shulchan Aruch is like mashma, like the Chalkas Binyamin. Now, let's take a step back. Some people have this all or nothing thought when it comes to pasaka. I can't keep Pas Yisrael. The crispy Stella D'oros, everything but Stella D'oros I could do, but Stella D'oros are so important to me. Or Krispy Kreme, if whatever. It's hard because the chalav akum is a problem. But Stella D'oro cookies, what could I do? So the truth is, if there's something that you really like better, so don't be makbid on Pas Yisrael, on that one thing. Because anyways, the din in the Shulchan Aruch is if it's better, then you're allowed to have it. So there's a such thing. It's not a stira. It's not a fraud for somebody to keep Pas Yisrael 95% of the items and eat that 5% of the items being Pas Akam. One is certainly allowed to do that. Now, what about price difference? What if the Pas Yisrael is more expensive? The Pas Akam is cheaper. So the Chagas Biyamin says, no, I don't care if the Pas Yisrael is more expensive. You have to buy the Pas Yisrael. Once again, if you're Sephardi or being Machmer, you have to buy the Pas Yisrael. Because I don't care if the Pas Akam is cheaper. That's not Yafim Mimenu. Rav Elyashiv says, generally the price difference isn't significant enough to count. And therefore you would have to buy the Pas Yisrael. Rav Moshe says the price difference is only a heter if you're extremely poor. Now what's Pshat of Rav Elyashiv and Rav Moshe Feinstein taking into account the price difference? What is price difference? The fact that the Goyish bread is cheaper. How is that in any way Yofim Menu? So how is that any way better? So I think the truth is the Goyish bread is not better because it's cheaper. But what was the whole yesod of having the Goyish bread? Because when the Goyish bread was better, it was considered shasat chak, not to have the Goyish bread. So if this is a big financial difference, because either it's a significant amount of money or you're very poor, then for you the cheaper price is going to be shasat chak. But for most people the cheaper price is not shasat chak. Now does this, how much is going to be the difference between buying, item A and item B? Usually very few items the difference is going to be more than $1. More than $1 is not shasat chak. Now, I heard somebody who want to claim that, yes, $1 is not an issue. I heard a Rav want to claim $1 is not an issue. But if you make a cheshbon over the course of the year, whether you're keeping Pas Yisrael or Pas Akum, it's going to end up to be a couple $100, $500. So if it's going to be $500 over the year, that's a significant amount of money. Personally, I don't like that taina so much because there's 100 different shaylas. You have to view each individual shayla one at a time or 500 at a time, whatever, one at a time, each 500 times. And in each shayla, it's not shasat chak. And I would say, b'pashtus, that person will not be able to be a machmer dika person and be having the pas palter. Okay. Now, fine. Now, many quote Rav Moshe, and this includes Rav Reuben Feinstein, Rav Belsky, Rav Forst, it's Rav Natan Greenberg. So there's many people that quote Rav Moshe Feinstein as saying that the Isser of Pas Akam, Pas Palter does not apply in a factory setting. Why not? Because think about it. In a factory setting, those workers those Goyish workers in the factory, you will never meet them in your whole life. You don't even know where these cookies are even made. You know sheikhs. How do I know where these Entenmann donuts are made? I have no idea where they come from. And I'm never going to meet them. And I'll tell you further, it wasn't made with a Goyish baker in his bakery with a Heimish touch, putting it into the oven. It was a bunch of guys messing around with a conveyor belt. It's no sheikhs to the Pas Akam, Pas Palter, no sheikhs to Chassanais, and Memei law, the Isser of Pas, we don't even consider it Pas Palter, and the whole Isser of Pas Akam does not apply, and anybody could have those donuts or bread or whatever, or Wonder Bread that was made in a factory. Now, this is quite a chiddush. Why is it quite a chiddush? Once again, Ramesh didn't write this down, but there's some very reliable sources that seem to be quoting him on this. But this seems to be a huge chiddush. Why? Because if you remember, we quoted earlier that you're not allowed to have even a guy with no kids. And the Taz said the reason is loy plug. So this is a loy plug. It's a loy plug. I don't care whether you have kids or you don't have kids. Your pas is aser. So if it's a loy plug, how can I have the factory bread? Zakter Moshe, it might be a light plug, but this is beyond. Remember, Moshe knew the Taz. Obviously, Moshe held this beyond the light plug. This is a whole different level, a whole different category. That is quite a bold svara for Moshe to make. It's one of those many svaras that I often say, if it wasn't Moshe who said it, then you can't say such a svara. But Moshe was Moshe. For bold svaras like this, that's one of the reasons that I have a picture of Moshe hanging in my living room. For svaras like this. Because it makes so much sense, but it's also so bold. Because it's going against the concept of light plug. Or going beyond it. Not a surprise, or Vazner quotes the Chazon Ish as saying you cannot rely on this factory svara. No, that's pas palter. Zohar Moshe Sternbach, you can't rely on the svara. No, that's not pas palter, that it's considered pas palter, and don't change the rules. It's a loy plug. Zak the Minchas Yitzchak says, as far as maybe you could rely on it, you could use it as a sniff leheter, but you shouldn't rely on it on its own right. Okay. Now, I would say Lamaisa, we definitely could use Ramosha as a sniff, and maybe in a B'shas T'chak you could actually rely on this Ramosha. Okay, so now, as I said, the Ramas paskins that were mekel by pas palter, and as I said in Sif Hey that were mekel. Everybody's mekel, even the Svardim and even the Machmir Ashkenazim, we're going to be mekel when the Goyish bread is better. Are there times that we are not mekel? And the answer is yes. The Shulchan Aruch and Orach Chaim, Tafresh Gimel, says that even those who are mekel throughout the year should be Machmir, not to have pas akum on Aseres Yimei Tshuva. And said, we're holy Jews for those 10 days. And the Shach here in Yeridea brings the Shulchan Aruch and says this is the minhag. So Bein Ashkenazim, Bein Tzvardim, everybody, we don't touch pas palter for these 10 days of Aseres Yimei Tshuva. Now, some people are mistaken to think this is only referring to bread itself. But in truth, it's not only referring to bread itself, it's referring to anything baked from the 5 grains. Anything baked from the 5 grains will be considered pas palter. Okay, to take it a step further, is this the only time that we have it? So, by the way, I heard there is apparently a Das Yocha that says it's only specifically bread, but l'maisa, the way that we paskin is that it applies well beyond just bread, and it applies to all the things that are baked from the 5 grains. Now the Bishbur says in Reish Mem Beis that even those that are mekel to have pas palter during the week should be machmir to have pas palter on Shabbos and Yontif. So Shabbos and Yontif, no pas palter. Oh, what if there's no Jewish baker? If there's no Jewish bakers in town? If there's no, people used to live on bread. If there's no Jewish bakers in town, what are you going to eat at Shabbos and Yontif? You'll make challahs. And in fact, this is one of the reasons I heard as to why it became the widespread minhag in Klal Yisrael for women to make challahs on Shabbos. Because at Shabbos, we only have Pas Yisrael. There's another reason to be mechaper for the chet of Chava, etc. But this is seemingly makes a lot of sense that throughout the week I can't just make bread all day. It's too crazy for a woman to make bread every single day. We'll buy from the Goyish palter. On Shabbos, the woman makes challahs, and we only have Pas Yisrael for one day a week that we could go through the effort. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says, however, if you're in the matzav of Einus, you can have the pas palter on Shabbos. You could, yes, have the pas palter on Shabbos. And the Mishnah Berurah also quotes the Pri Megadim that let's say the only thing that you have for Lechem Mishnah is pas palter. Don't pass up having Lechem Mishnah, but use the pas palter for that Lechem Mishnah. Now, This means, to be clear, on Shabbos, not only are you not going to have the Wonder Bread on Shabbos, but on Shabbos you're also not going to have the palter dika pretzels. Those OU pretzels, something very important that I maybe should have mentioned earlier. I'm not talking about theory which isn't applicable to B'zman Hazeh. Most of the big hechsherim, like the OU, they give a hechsher to things which are pas palter. You should know, I sent the email a couple of days ago to the OU, and I asked, there's certain shtikim and trickim that we're going to discuss soon about how they use, maybe remote ignition of ovens and etc. to get around bishul akam svaras. We're going to give a share in bishul akam sometime in the future. So there's all different tricks that they use to get around the bishul akam issues. So I asked, do you use those things to get around the palter? And they answered, I have to give them some serious credit, they answered on that day in a very clear fashion. They show their cards, the OU, which is good and impressive. So they sent back, no. If almost the high majority of our products, which are bread products or baked products, are pas palter, they're not pas Yisrael. Except this list, they sent me a list with, 100 and 150 items, I don't know exactly, I didn't count. So outside of those items that were on the list, everything else which is baked is pas palter. So those items, those OU pretzels, you should not be eating on Shabbos. That pie crust, if it's not a Heimische brand, that OU pie crust that you want to make a dessert in, you should not use that on Shabbos. So it's not only the Wonder Bread, it's the pretzels, it's those bakery items, maybe certain cereals should not be eaten on Shabbos. That's one of the pshatim in the Heimische brand cereals. Yes, that is. And therefore, we have to be very, what about those bagels? I forgot what they were called. I used to, growing up, there was these bagels that you get, it came in a bag. You bought them at the supermarket. They were pas palter. You can't have those for shalosh shudas, guys. Okay, wake up. I think people knew about Aser Simei Tshuva. I have a feeling people did not know that you're not supposed to have pas palter on Shabbos. And guys, the Olam, please do not have pas palter on Shabbos. And we'll continue from here next week. Shkayach for listening.